And we're back to talk about a few things going on in the news. Well, kind of in the news. And of course, it's George related, so I have Preston with me. Did you see that slight controversy that went down with the 2024 Ice and Fire calendar, where one of the artists got accused of using AI? And before we go into this, I just want to say off the bat, I don't know for sure if this person was using it, but it's very telling how we've gotten to a point where you can't really tell anymore what's going on. There's a Game of Thrones YouTuber who I won't name. People have hit me up privately and asked, like, if he's using AI to voice his own videos, and I watch some of his stuff, and I can't tell anymore.
Right.
Because his voice is normally very neutral, without much expression to it, and now it just sounds even more like that, and I just can't tell anymore. It's getting that good.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it's difficult to do a mimicked voice with expression and emotion and things like that. Like, so, but if your voice is boring to begin with, what's the difference, I suppose? But yeah, I mean, the thing with AI right now, I kind of say, well, is it ugly, crappy art that I don't like? Then I usually just assume it's AI. Right? Like the AI has gotten very good at just producing just god-awful art that I just do not want to see. And I just assume when I see god-awful stuff that I don't want to see that it's AI.
If you're watching this on YouTube, then I'll make sure to put the picture up of what we're talking about. But it's the Dragonstone picture from the 2024 calendar. And I don't want to shit on this guy if that's his art style, but that's supposed to be Dragonstone. And I'm not going to lie, I can see why some people might think it's AI. But at the same time, I personally have never really been much of a fan of any of the Dragonstone art we've ever gotten, ever. I feel like the television show version is better, even though it totally did not follow the book description at all.
I mean, I do agree. Like, I mean, the show version is just a castle that exists in the real world. But I will say that the different, like the idea of all of these elaborate dragons existing and being part of the structures and dragon gargoyles being here and there, it seems a little busy, I suppose. And this artwork that you're showing me is pretty busy. Some of the Dragonstone stuff I don't mind, like different reimaginings of it. But yeah, it's I guess it's a bit gaudy and overwhelming when there's just so many
active
things going
volcano
on.
with lava coming down.
Right.
That's very high fantasy. That's like super duper high fantasy. And I've always thought of Game of Thrones as like kind of a more grounded fantasy. There's fantasy elements to it, like dragons, of course, magic, but people aren't like casting fireballs from their hand like you'd see in Skyrim, or Elder Scrolls, so forth.
I'm sending you an image of probably what the most accurate to the book Dragonstone might look like.
On Discord or Facebook?
On Discord.
Okay.
Where it's actually talking about the towers being the bodies of dragons and stuff. And you can look at that and be like, that's a bit much, like it's a bit much. It's you feel like you're more in like something by Geiger or whatever. Then there's ones that are a little more subtle, and I did.
Wait, there it is.
Go. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first one is the one that's probably actually most accurate to how Dragonstone is described in the books.
This is the one by Alan Douglas.
Yes. One by Alan Douglas.
I'm going to be very real with you, and I apologize to the audience for being a little vulgar, but I'm not going to lie, homie. Those kind of look like dragon dildos you can possibly buy online. I'm not going to lie to you, but a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I say it kind of feels like Geiger, like, the guy did the artist.
For Alien?
For Alien. Like, his stuff is all dicks and vaginas, right? The second one, I think, is a little more subtle. It's the one I like, but it's not as accurate to how things are described in the books.
Like who did that one? Do you know?
Let me see if I can find the author for that. The not author but artist for that.
I found it. It's A man by the name of Philip Straub from the World of Ice and Fire shows how Dragonstone is supposed to look.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very real with you. That looks less Game of Thrones and more Lord of the Rings. That looks like a place Sauron would, like, set up his base of operations.
Yeah. You know, I mean, you're right. You're right. I'm trying to think, you know, any others. I mean, there's a few others that you kind of see here and there, but they're not. You don't really get a good view of the whole castle.
This is Mark Simonetti.
That's Mark Simonetti's.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's Mark Simonetti's, which, you know, it's good. I just wish the whole castle could be seen. Maybe that picture's been cut off, and maybe I can find a...
I'll be real with you, like whenever you add dragon statues to anything, you always add a level of like high fantasy to it automatically.
Yeah.
Right. So I like that Game of Thrones, Ice and Fire in general is more grounded and not spectacular because in the same calendar, the same 2024 calendar, have you seen Starfall?
No.
Oh my God, Starfall looks absolutely out of this world. It looks insane. It looks like it could be the actual capital of the entire continent with how crazy good it looks. And once again, not a bad drawing, of course, not by any stretch of the imagination, but they went so big and fantastical with it that you have to wonder, why is this not the capital of the entire country?
Oh yeah, you know what? I did see this one. It's very similar to Mont Saint Michel. Kind of view, but you're right that it's just massive. It's just massive. That is
insane. Like that's the castle I would expect one of the wealthiest families in the entire world to live in.
Right. One that we would have heard a lot more about, you know. But again, all of these castles are impossible to build. At least the technology they have. Right,
we're being a little. I'll be very real with the audience. Like, I'm not an artist. I don't, unless Preston secretly likes to paint or something. I don't think he's an artist. We're just being like a little critical. But when it comes to like Ice and Fire, I feel as though if it's like a major great house like the Starks or the Lannisters, and they have like an elaborate castle, that makes sense. But somewhat of a minor house like the Danes.
Right. I mean, that's a beautiful picture.
It is.
And it's just kind of, it's a well-balanced, like pretty picture. And, you know, he's kind of drawn different things from different times and areas of Europe and combined them all in on this base that makes it look like it's Mont Saint Michel and things like that. But, you know, so I do like the picture. But I do think it's just way too fancy and way too elaborate for Starfall. It's sort of like, do you remember when Sam Tarly like goes to his house in Game of Thrones?
He goes to
Hornhill.
Hornhill looks like it's like kind of like Greek pantheon.
Right. But it's like, it's also frigging enormous. You're like, oh my God, like when did Hornhill become like so wealthy? It's like over the top. It's over the top.
It's insane, but I do like it.
It looks like it's the size of the Pentagon. Like it's enormous, you know, like
a little bit. But no, that was the controversy in the fandom, is that people thought that George was using AI in the calendar. I don't think George is. I don't think George thinks about it that much, and I don't think the artist is using AI here for it. I'm not trying to insult the guy. In my personal opinion, I just think you're right. It's a little too busy and a little too insane and ridiculous, but it's a calendar. I would like for George though to settle on what the actual castles look like, because it feels like every other book that has an illustration, there's like a new illustration for all these castles. We thought we knew what they look like.
Yeah. The thing is, what I don't understand is he describes these castles in the text. Like, read the text and see if like what you're drawing like resembles it or not. You know, like for instance, here we can clearly see like the front. Maybe that's the front door, and there's flows of lava coming down. Now, Davos walks up to the front door of Dragonstone, you know, and he doesn't talk about walking past rivers of lava. Like, that's just wouldn't, like, it just wouldn't happen. There'd be like flying chunks of, so, if you've ever been hiking on kind of somewhat active volcanoes, which is something that is fairly common in different parts of the world. Like if you go to Central America, there's a lot of like mountains you can climb that are like somewhat active volcanoes. And there's various days where they say, no, you can't really hike because there's actually like volcanic rock getting shot up into the air and landing at various points. So like, don't do it. And you're like, oh, right. Okay. So, I mean, something like this is just not, it's just not realistic that you'd ever have it be like an active living castle. Like it's over the top. Did you want to talk about the fact that they approved this picture for the calendar and George signed off on it despite the number of limbs on those dragons?
I'm glad you brought that up, because if there's anything everyone knows about George R.R. Martin is that he's super anal about dragons having 4 limbs, right? And a couple weeks ago, he actually wrote this incredibly large, not a blog post about how his dragons don't have 4 limbs, like you see in so many other fantasy works. His dragons have just like the 2 legs and then the wings, and yeah, that's he goes on this very long rant about it. If there's anything we all know about George, it's this one thing, that he likes his dragons anatomically correct.
He goes on this rant somewhat frequently.
He does. That's weird. And I understand why. But for high fantasy dragons, like, I get it. You know, high fantasy, do whatever the fuck. But when it comes to like grounded fantasy, like Ice and Fire, yeah, try your best to be as realistic as possible. But no, in the illustration for the 2024 calendar, the dragons have 4 limbs.
Which is so funny because it's like, it's also, it's such a famous pet peeve of his that you'd think, you know, someone would tell him that before the guy started. And then after he, you know, and I don't know if George signs off on these calendars or if he just is just like, whatever, you know, and his big machine is going and he's just you know, and he's just like, maybe he doesn't care, or at this point he's like, oh God, like the guy already put all this work into it. I guess I can't do anything about it now.
Yeah, fuck it,
like,
right?
He doesn't want to go, you know, he doesn't want to send it back and be like, do it again.
I was actually going to ask you about this. Does he sign off on the calendars, or and let's be real, we all have calendars on our phones. Like, we don't really, who's really bought a paper calendar? I can see, like, workplaces having it, you know, but with, like, stuff on it, like basic calendars. But even then, who's really buying these calendars? I would rather buy an art book than a calendar.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously they still sell, so they do them every year. I think it's like, you know, it's one of those, I think it's a Christmas gift kind of thing. Like, what else are you going to give somebody? I'll give them a calendar. You know, everybody needs a calendar. Well, no, they don't. But you know, it's just, what is my nephew Carmine like? I think he's into Ice and Fire. Oh, crap. I'll just get him this calendar.
Honestly, a coffee table book of art would be great every year. That would really be like a really nice, sweet thing. But a calendar?
Yeah.
So, on the topic of George and his dragon lore and the blog post that he wrote a while ago, the very long one, he goes off once again on this long thing about dragons and their behavior. And I find it funny how this is something he's really super into, about this whole thing about the lore and like where dragons like to roam and where they like to stay specifically and how they don't stray too far. Yet at the same time, he also forgot about the dragon Silverwing, who decided to stay at Red Lake and not really move from there. This is lore that he wrote about, yet here he is complaining about a mistake that he has also made.